All right, today we are diving headfirst into one of the most intense parts of the entire Bible, the 7 final plagues in the book of Revelation. You might know them as the bowl judgments. And trust me, these are described as the absolute no-holds-barred climax of God's wrath in the end times.
So what are we actually talking about here? What are these 7 final plagues? Well, the book of Revelation paints a picture of the most severe, the most final outpouring of God's judgment imaginable. So let's get right into the text and break down exactly what's prophesied to happen, step by step.
Okay, but first, a little context is super important. Where does all this fit in? Well, these judgments are said to go down during a future period called the tribulation. And this isn't just any time. It's described as a time of massive global chaos, all under the rule of this really deceptive and powerful figure. You guessed it, the Antichrist. The bowl judgments, they're the grand, devastating finale to this whole period.
Okay, let's talk about this wrath. Now, the key thing to understand here is that the source material doesn't portray these as just random, chaotic natural disasters. No. This is described as a very deliberate, very specific, and escalating series of plagues.
So, if you turn to Revelation chapter 16, you'll see them called the 7 bowls of God's wrath. And it's really crucial to get this. They are the final set of judgments. They come after the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets have already happened. And according to the text, these bowls are by far the most severe. They're unleashed right at the moment when humanity's rebellion has hit its absolute peak.
All right, so let's walk through them. These plagues are said to unfold one right after the other, and they start by hitting the natural world hard. But, and this is a big but, they're also super specific, targeting the very people who've aligned themselves with the Antichrist. Here we go. The whole sequence kicks off when the first of 7 angels steps forward, takes his bowl, and pours it out directly onto the land. And the effect is immediate and pretty gruesome. Painful, ugly sores start breaking out on people. But here's what's really fascinating about this first plague. It's incredibly precise. It's not just some random illness. The text says it only affects the people who have accepted the mark of the beast, which is that symbol of loyalty to the Antichrist. So anyone who resisted him, the people sometimes called the tribulation saints, they're apparently spared from this.
Okay, next up is the second angel. His target? The sea. And the result is just as quick and just as catastrophic.
I mean, just try to wrap your head around the scale of this. See, an earlier trumpet judgment in Revelation is said to have destroyed 1/3 of all sea life. That's already huge. But this is absolute. The entire ocean turns into blood, and every single living thing in it dies. Just like that, the world's oceans become this enormous, dead wasteland.
So you can start to see this terrifying pattern emerging, right? First the land, then the salt water of the seas. So what's next? The third bowl takes aim at the fresh water. We're talking all the rivers and springs that people absolutely need to survive.
So at this point, think about it. The world's entire water supply is just gone, corrupted, turned to blood. But the text doesn't just leave it at that. It doesn't just describe what happens. It gives a really chilling reason for why it happens.
Yeah, an angel is actually quoted in the passage, declaring that this judgment is totally just. Why? Because the people of the earth had, quote, shed the blood of your holy people and your prophets. So in a way, the punishment is presented as this kind of grim, poetic justice. They dealt in blood, and now they have to drink it.
All right, so the next set of plagues, they kind of shift gears. We move from these massive environmental disasters to things that are much more about direct human suffering and even supernatural deception. It's all building towards something, a final global showdown.
So now we get to the 4th judgment. And this time, the angel pours his bowl out not on the earth, but directly on the sun.
And what happens? The sun's heat just skyrockets. It gets so intense that it literally scorches people with fire. But this is where we see a really critical theme start to play out. You'd think people would be begging for mercy, right? Nope. Their response is total defiance. They curse God's name, and the text is very clear on this. They refuse to repent and glorify Him. This idea of people hardening their hearts, it just becomes a central part of this whole story.
All right, bowl number 5. This one strikes right at the heart of the Antichrist's power.
So the beast's kingdom, the Antichrist's whole regime, is suddenly plunged into this thick supernatural darkness. And this just piles on top of the agony from the sores and the scorching heat. I mean, the description is vivid. People are gnawing their tongues in pain. But, and this is just incredible, their response is exactly the same. They curse God, and they just double down on their refusal to repent.
Now, the sixth bowl is a little different. It's more complex than the others. It's not just about inflicting another plague. This one is all about setting the stage for the final epic battle of the age.
This one plays out in 3 key steps. First, the great Euphrates River completely dries up. Why? To clear a path for the armies of the east. Next, 3 demonic spirits, and the text says they look like frogs, come out of the mouths of what's presented as this unholy trinity: Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. And what's their job? Their mission is to go out and perform all these deceptive miracles to convince every leader on earth to gather their armies for one last winner-take-all battle at a place called Armageddon.
And that brings us to the 7th and final bowl. This is it, the culmination of everything, and it's described as a global cataclysm, something the world has literally never seen before.
So the 7th angel takes his bowl and pours it into the air itself. And as he does, this loud voice just booms from the throne in heaven, and it declares one thing: it is done. This is the signal. This series of judgments is now officially over.
And the effects are instantaneous and totally global. We're talking about the most powerful earthquake in all of human history, an earthquake so big it completely reshapes the planet. Cities around the world just collapse. Every single island vanishes. The mountains are gone. And on top of all that, these massive 100-pound hailstones start falling from the sky. The physical world as we know it is basically unmade.
So, wow. After a world-shattering event like that, you have to ask, what could possibly be next? Well, the narrative immediately pivots to the aftermath, and it leads us directly into that final battle that the sixth bowl was busy setting up.
And the text lays out a pretty clear sequence for how this all wraps up. First, you get the final judgment of what's called Babylon the Great, which is seen as a symbol for the entire corrupt world system. Then, with all those armies gathered at Armageddon, Christ is prophesied to return and just decisively defeat them. And this final battle is what kicks off a 1,000-year reign of peace on earth. So whether you read it as literal prophecy or as a powerful allegory, the 7 bowls paint this really stark vision of ultimate justice and the radical and violent remaking of the entire world.